The crowd that had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest. The scribes and elders had gathered at Caiaphas's house, and they were waiting for Jesus to be delivered. Peter followed Jesus, though at some distance, so as not to be seen. He slipped into Caiaphas's house and attached himself to a group of servants, and he sat watching, waiting to see how things would unfold. The high priest and his council of advisers first produced false evidence against Jesus. False evidence meant to justify some charge of Jesus' execution. But even though many men were willing to lie, the council couldn't come up with evidence it wanted. Finally, 2 men stood up.
Look, he said, I can destroy God's temple and rebuild it in 3 days.
What more evidence do you need?
Then Caiaphas, the high priest, stood up and addressed Jesus.
Aren't you going to respond to these charges? What exactly are these 2 men accusing you of?
Jesus remained silent.
Under a sacred oath before the living God, tell us plainly, are you the Anointed One, the Son of God?
So you seem to be saying. I will say this. Beginning now, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of God's power and glory and coming on heavenly clouds.
The high priest tore his robes and screeched,
Blasphemy! We don't need any more witnesses. We've all just witnessed this most grievous blasphemy right here and now. So, gentlemen, what's your verdict?
He deserves to die.
Yeah, he deserves to die.
Then they spat in his face and hit him. Some of them smacked him, slapped him across the cheeks, and jeered.
Well, Anointed One, prophesy! Who hit you? And who's going to hit you next?
As all this was going on in Caiaphas's chamber, Peter was sitting in the courtyard with some servants. One of the servant girls came up to him.
You were with Jesus the Galilean, weren't you?
And as Jesus predicted, Peter denied it before everyone.
Not me, I don't know what you're talking about.
He went out to stand by the gate, and as he walked past, another servant girl recognised him.
That man over there, he was here with Jesus the Nazarene.
Again, just had Jesus had predicted, Peter denied him, swearing an oath.
I don't know him.
Peter then went to chat with a few of the other servants. A little while later, some of the other servants approached him.
Look, we know you must be one of Jesus' followers.
You got that telltale Galilean accent.
You speak like you're from the same area as his followers.
Cursing and swearing, Peter denied him again.
I don't know him.
As the exclamation left his mouth, the cock crowed. And Peter remembered. He remembered that Jesus had looked at him with something like pity and said, "This very night, before the cock crows in the morning, you will deny me 3 times. And Peter went outside, sat down on the ground, and wept. Eventually, the chief priests and elders looked around and saw that it was morning. They convened a council meeting whose sole purpose was to hand down Jesus' death sentence. They tied Jesus up, took him away, and handed him over to the governor of Judea, a man called Pilate. Judas, the one who had betrayed him with a kiss for 30 pieces of silver, saw that Jesus had been condemned, and suddenly Judas regretted all that he had done. He took the silver back to the chief priests and elders and tried to return it to them.
I can't keep this money. I've sinned. I've betrayed an honest man. His blood will be on my hands.
We don't want your money back. We don't want to do anything to do with you. The state of your soul is really none of our concern.
Judas threw the money down in the temple, went off, and hanged himself. The chief priests looked at the silver coins and picked them up.
You know, we can't put blood money in the temple's treasury.
After some deliberation, they took the money and bought a plot of land called Potter's Field. They would use it to bury foreigners, suicides, and others who were unfit for full Jewish burial. To this day, the field is called Bloodfield because it was bought with blood money. And when the priests bought Potter's Field, they unwittingly fulfilled a prophecy made long ago to the prophet Jeremiah. They took 30 pieces of silver, the price set on the head of the children of Israel, and they gave them for the Potter's Field as the Eternal One instructed. Jesus was standing before the governor Pilate.
Are you the King of the Jews?
So you say.
The chief priests and the elders stood and poured out their accusations that Jesus was a traitor, a seditious rebel, a crazy, a would-be saviour, a would-be king. Jesus stood in the stream of accusations, but he didn't respond.
Do you hear these accusations they are making against you?
Still, Jesus said nothing, which Pilate found rather astounding. No protests, no defence, nothing. Now, the governor had a custom. During the great Jewish festival of Passover, he would allow the crowd to pick just one of the condemned men, and he, Pilate, would set that man free. Just like that. Gratuitous, gracious freedom. At this time, they had a notorious prisoner named Barabbas. So when the crowd gathered, Pilate offered them a choice.
Whom do you want me to free? Barabbas or Jesus, whom they call the Anointed One?
Pilate knew the chief priests and elders hated Jesus and had delivered him up because they envied him. Then Pilate sat down on his judgment seat, and he received a message from his wife. Distance yourself utterly from the proceedings against the righteous man. I've had a dream about him, a dream full of twisted sufferings. He is innocent, I know it, and we should have nothing to do with him. But the chief priests and the elders convinced the crowd to demand that Barabbas, not Jesus, whom some called the Anointed One, be freed, and that Jesus be put to death.
Which of these men would you have me free?
Barabbas!
What would you have me do with this Jesus whom some call the Anointed One?
Crucify him!
Why? What crime has this man committed?
Crucify him! Crucify him!
Crucify him!
Pilate saw that unless he wanted a riot on his hands, he would now have to bow down to their wishes. So he took a pitcher of water, stood before the crowd, and washed his hands.
You will see to this crucifixion, for this man's blood will be upon you and not upon me. I wash myself of it.
Indeed. Let his blood be upon us and our children.
So Pilate released Barabbas, and he had Jesus flogged and handed over to be crucified.